Okay, everybody. I have no clue where to begin with this. Before we get started, I have a little disclaimer to state. I am not a lawyer. I do not pretend to be a lawyer on TV or YouTube or anywhere else. These are my own opinions based upon my own research, and that I can 100% be wrong on this, on all of this information. However, based upon my research, as I'm going to show you, I do stand by it. And finally, if you do need legal advice, please contact an attorney in your own jurisdiction that is trained on those matters. With that out of the way, let us continue. So, I got a hold of this bill that I will be posting the link to the PDF in my description down below. I am utterly appalled, and it is literally just so miffed. I've sat down to record this like 5 or 6 times already, and just every time I go through it, I get so irritated that I actually do something stupid. So that totally undermines my entire point on the thing. So with that, let's move on. So yesterday, February 4th, I was watching Louder with Crowder, and they were talking about AOC and how they believe she's lying, yada, yada, yada. That's all irrelevant to this. They actually ended up sharing House Resolution 127 with us, talking about what entails into it. I agree with them. It is a very horrible bill, and I don't want to see it passed. As a matter of fact, wait till the end, and I have some call to action, so to speak, for you guys. I don't think it's a violation of our Second Amendment right, but I do think it is an unconstitutional bill the way it is written as of right now. Okay. Now, what is my issue with it? Well, it breaches our privacy as citizens, and not necessarily in a way that is not warranted with law enforcement, but it is definitely not warranted with who all has access to this information if this bill were enacted, once the information collected is collected and stored. So why do I think it is a Fourth Amendment violation versus a Second Amendment violation? Well, it has to do with one of the sections where it involves a database. And let me quote first the actual amendment and why. See if you pick up on it while I'm reading it here. Okay? So, U.S. Constitution Amendment number 4, search and seizure. Now, Jay, before you go to the Hey Jay and start typing in there, because we all know the Fourth Amendment's about search and seizure, but the key line is the beginning here. It's the first half of the line. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, that first part where it's the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. That quite literally means that we have the right to privacy. Now, again, against the government. But the fact that the government is wanting to do what they're about to do in this bill, or at least what they're proposing to do in this bill, in my opinion, is a direct violation of that, because you no longer will have privacy if you are a gun owner. And we'll get into that here in just a second. The bill, House Resolution 127, to provide the licensing of firearms, ammunition, possession, and the registration of firearms and the prohibited possession of certain ammunition, presented to us or introduced by Miss Jackson Lee, or Sheila Jackson Lee, which is referred to the Committee of the Judiciary. Now, I don't know if it's been picked up by the Judiciary yet. Every time I try to search it on the Congress site, I don't get it directly, but I do have this. So it's possible no action's been taken upon it yet. The act may be cited as the Sabika Sheikh Firearm Licensing and Registration Act. Rather irrelevant to this discussion, but just so people try to look it up elsewhere after I post this. Firearm licensing and registration system. In general, Chapter 44 of Title 18 U.S. Code is amended by adding at the end of the following Section 932, licensing of firearm and ammunition possession, registration of firearms. A. 932A. In general, the Attorney General, through the Bureau of ATF, shall establish a system for licensing the possession of firearms or ammunition in the United States and for the registration with the Bureau for each firearm present in the United States. So we have failure number one here of this representative. You are not going to get every firearm in the United States registered. Now, I'm not talking about ones that have been destroyed, etc. I'm literally talking about the ones that are held by criminals. They're not going to give up that information. Why would they? The previous owners of them can't give up information that they don't have because they don't know the whereabouts of it. For all they know, it's been destroyed. So, I think that's quite a lofty goal because the ATF is not going to find every weapon. So, firearm registration under which is 932B, required information. Under the firearm registration system, the owner of a firearm shall transmit to the Bureau the make, model, and serial number of the firearm, the identity of the owner of the firearm, the date the firearm was acquired by the owner, and where the firearm is or will be stored. Note that they said not the date that it was purchased, but the date that it was acquired. So, depending on the wait periods, etc. Notice specifying the identity of a person to whom and any period of time during which the firearm will be loaned to a person. What their meaning is if I had a gun and I give it to a friend to go hunting with, and I wasn't there. The deadline for supplying the information the transmission required by paragraph 1 shall be made A, in the case of firearms acquired before the effective date of this, 3 months after the effective date of this bill. B, the case of firearm acquired on or after the effective date, the date the owner acquires the firearm. Now, I think this is something that would be, at least B, the section B will here, be something that will be part of the paperwork filing and everything of, getting a firearm. It'll be incorporated. It'll be another tax grab. It'll be another, whatever else. But here we're coming up on the part that really, really pisses me off. And it really gets me. And this is what's been causing me to have to re-record this thing several times. Okay. Section 3, 932, what are we in? 932A? Oh no, we're in 932B, subsection 3. Database. A. In general, the Attorney General shall establish and maintain a database of all firearms registered pursuant to the subsection. B. Access. Now this is the kicker. The Attorney General shall make the contents of the database accessible to all members of the public. You can see why I'm trying to hide this, I'm sorry, not all members of the public need to know who owns a gun, why they own a gun. Well, they won't know why, but who owns a gun, where they live, how many guns they have. That's just inviting criminals to come in and rob my house. That's inviting criminals to come in and, especially if I'm gone on vacation, it's inviting them to come to places that maybe I have a storage unit where I hold them. And if they can get access to that storage unit, guess what? They can rob it. So it bothers me, to say the least. After the public is all federal, state, and local law enforcement authorities. I think that they should only be able to, under an actual warrant, probable cause. Why do you need to know? Like, for example, hey, we just picked up this gun at the scene of a murder, and its serial number matches, or that serial number is there. Let's look up who owns this gun. Oh, so-and-so owns this gun. Well, use myself, for example. Jay owns this gun. Oh, it's been reported stolen as of 2 nights ago when his house was broken into. Or, hey, it hasn't been reported stolen. Why? Oh, he's been away on vacation. His house was robbed 2 nights ago. We knew it was robbed. We just didn't know there was a gun. Okay. Have we gotten a hold of him? Yes or no? You know, because I tell you what, if I had a gun and I had a house and it was broken into, and I was told while I was on vacation, hey, your house has been broken into, the first thing I'm doing is getting in contact with the police and be like, I had a gun. It was located here. Here's the serial numbers, etc. Here's the amount of ammunition I had for it, etc. That way, even if it was used in a gun shortly after, if it was used shortly in a crime after that fact, they at least know that I was trying to be as proactive as possible. Responsible gun ownership would dictate that you would want to do that. But, you know, again, I don't think that they should just have carte blanche access to it. And I definitely don't think all members of the public need to have access to it at all. You should have to have a reasonable request why. All branches of the armed forces, I'm sorry. Yeah, these people do have PTSD. There are issues there. But I would also trust them with the guns more than I would, you know, anybody else that hasn't received training. And then all state and local governments, I'm sorry, DSHS, you know, my local state DSHS or my city's health and human services, or health and human services, same thing. Housing and urban development offices need to know this. No, they don't. They don't at all. This database, totally illegal, in my opinion. It's totally unconstitutional for the sole fact that no one has the right to know what goes on in my house. No one has the right to know what I'm doing. No one has the right to know that I own a gun. Nobody has the right to know that I own a motorcycle or any other thing. Licensing requirements, I mean, again, I don't have a problem per se with licensing, or at least going through verification to own a firearm. But I do take issue with, what are we in? We're on section 2. Trying to make sense of where I'm at here. Oh, we're now out of section B. We're now into subsection C. Licensing system. 1. Requirements. 1. General license. Except otherwise provided in the subsection, the Attorney General shall issue a license to possession of firearm and ammunition if the individual has attained the age of 21. All right, let's stop allowing 18-year-olds to get to sign any contracts, to buy cars, stop them from joining the military, stop them from getting married. Yeah, let's just stop them from doing everything. As a matter of fact, let's raise the voting age at this point to 21, and while we're at it, let's raise the federal age of tobacco use to 21. What else can we do around ages? Yes, people are not fully mentally developed. Their brains aren't fully developed, everything. I get that. I understand the sciences behind that. But the problem is we have basically said that adulthood was 18. And we're now shifting it from 18 to 21. What's next? 25? 26? Shall we stop allowing people to vote? I mean, in my last, what was it? Oh, when I did the Mr. Beats video where he was talking about the amendments that he would pass. One of his first ones was lowering the voting age to 16. Well, if we're going to, I understand his justification for it because they do pay taxes. I can see why you just don't have them pay taxes. Or have that tax go under their parents, you know, as this, whatever, you know, more convoluted than it really needs to be. But at the point, I don't think that it's fair to people who are adults to strip them of their rights. And as a matter of fact, there is no age limit on the Second Amendment. It's not prudent to give a 2 or 3-year-old a gun, obviously. Heck, I know kids that grew up around guns that didn't get their first gun until they were like 10 or 11, and they went through a hunter safety course, things like that. They were taught to respect weapons, and that's the thing, is we're not teaching kids anymore to respect. We are teaching kids that to fear. There is a certain amount of fear with respect, obviously, but the point I'm making is that why are we taking away the rights of people for no reason? Can you explain that to me? Why are we taking the rights away from people? Period. There's usually a just cause reason for it. They've committed a felony. They've done something so egregious that warrants it. Or, unfortunately, they don't have the mental capacity to actually exercise those rights. Doesn't mean that they don't have rights. Just certain rights, people don't get to have, like, the right to own a gun because you don't understand the moral differences of right and wrong. Well, I don't even know if that's true. So scratch that. I was lost in a train of thought that went well beyond what I actually know for a fact. But my point is, why are we raising it to 21? Can anybody explain to me why this is an okay thing? Can anybody show me where it says that there is actually an age limit on the Constitution for the rights? We often, I'm going to sidetrack here for a minute. We often talk about it, like Mr. Beats was talking about with lowering the voting age to 16, because there are some informed kids out there that could do the, who could vote. Doesn't mean that I trust them with their vote, but they're smart enough that they could understand complex topics and things like that. I also don't have a problem with those kids owning guns either. But they also have certain, their rights under the Constitution are still all there and valid. So, and as a matter of fact, I don't even think there is an actual age for the right to vote, period. It's just something that, we assume to be an adult thing. All right. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Representatives, hold on. I'm in the 14th Amendment, by the way. Representatives shall be appointed among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding that should probably be struck out. But when the right to vote of any election for the choice of electors for president and vice president, representatives in Congress, elect executive or judicial officers of a state, or members of the legislation therein, is denied to any male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age. So technically the voting age should be 21, according to the 14th Amendment. So, yeah. Although I could be reading that wrong. Anyways, the point I'm getting at with this amendment is I don't agree with it. Undergoing psychological evaluation, I can understand. I don't agree with it entirely, but I understand. There are people who are severely depressed. There are people who are severely psychologically don't need to be having firearms, let alone any other weapon, really. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, anything can technically be a weapon if used properly, so... I don't have a problem with this part either. For getting a license, successfully completes the training course that's at least 24 hours long. I think everybody who owns a firearm should be trained in how to properly use and hold and store a firearm. And then you get into the antique firearms, the military style, the psychological evaluation, and boy, the denial of the license. The individual has been hospitalized with mental illness of disturbance or a diagnosis including depression, homicidal ideation, suicidal ideation, attempted suicide, or addiction to controlled substances within the meaning of the Controlled Substances Act, or alcohol, or a brain disease, including dementia or Alzheimer's. Okay. I don't think that just because somebody's been hospitalized with depression, it is warranted. Homicidal ideation, of course. Suicidal ideation, yeah. Attempted suicide, yep. Addiction to controlled substances, I can agree with that. Even an addiction to alcohol. You shouldn't be possessing a firearm per se, because what happens if you have a firearm and you're going through withdrawals and you don't have the structure around you to prevent you from doing something foolish? Like, I don't know, robbing a liquor store. There are a host of reasons where I will agree and disagree with this bill. And yes, it will seem like contradiction on my part, flip-flopping on my part. But again, it's just because I understand doesn't mean that I necessarily agree with it. So, and that is pretty much all that I wanted to cover of this bill, because it is, authorization for, you have to have insurance for the firearm too. Yeah, I can see USA, Geico, Prudential, all these other places, these insurance companies definitely covering gun ownership. Yeah. And that kind of leads me into my next point against some of the arguments that I'm foreseeing that I will hear about it, but I don't think that it's necessarily, I don't think that they're they're going to be valid arguments. And I don't think many of the people that I hang around with in my circle would actually argue this point. But people often will make comparisons between, when talking about death statistics, guns and cars. I think it's a complete fallacious thing to do, because one, you have a right to own a gun. Two, you don't have a right to own a car or use a car. And yes, you have to have a license to own a car, and technically in some states you have to have a license to possess a firearm because it's part of your concealed carry. You have to register your car. Do you need to register your gun? That's part of your concealed carry. Yeah, I can understand that. But is either of that information public though? No. Nobody can just be like, hey, what car is Jay driving that, what cars does Jay own? Oh, he's driving a car that he doesn't own. Arrest him. There's no, you can't assume that I'm driving a car that is not mine, that I've stolen it. But, if people see me, like my friends saw me driving, say they saw me driving a Tesla, because you see a crap ton of them around here where I live. Say a friend of mine let me borrow it because I dropped him off at a doctor's appointment and I'm waiting for him to get done, and I go to McDonald's or whatever. It doesn't mean that I've stolen the car, but if other friends of ours who didn't know what was going on saw me driving the car, knew it wasn't mine, looked up what cars I had, and then reported me to the police with a stolen car, do you see a problem with that? Just a little bit of a problem with that? Now, this database that they're talking about will create those types of problems, because even if we don't have that right now, what is to stop somebody from, who I disagree with, online, in public, wherever, in real life, whatever, if I disagree with them, what's to stop them from looking up my name on this database and then reporting me for something that could potentially cause me to lose my right? Doesn't have to be something that's true. They could just report me for something, much like in the way of DMCA claims on YouTube and Twitch. It's a whole nother argument for another time. But what I'm trying to go for here is, what kind of understanding I'm trying to go for is, this database is now allowing the public to know my private information. I don't outwardly tell people my address. I don't outwardly tell people where I live. Yes, it can be considered public information if I were to be involved in a lawsuit or if it's involved in something else. But they don't need to know what car I drive. They don't need to know what kind of cell phone I have. They don't need to know they don't even need to know my health insurance. Yet eventually when we start passing laws like this where, all right, your name is on here, so you own this, so now we have to have your name, and it's going to be publicly available along with your address, your location where you're storing it, yada, yada, yada. And again, people don't even need to know that, like storage, going back to the storage thing. If I have it locked up in a gun safe, like a small gun safe, that can be fairly easy to carry out, of my storage unit. What's to stop somebody from going in and breaking into that storage unit, especially if I'm not the only one in that storage unit? They decide to just break in and they know which unit, what floor, etc. All this information, It frustrates me. And again, I see the good intention here, but the road to hell, the road to lost rights, is paved with good intentions. Because again, like I said, you start with one weapon. What comes next? Do we start taking away knives? Well, what defines a knife as a weapon? Because technically, a butter knife could be a weapon. Hell, I even have this plastic knife here. That could be a weapon. The point I'm trying to... When is enough enough? That is where we're trying to get... That's what I'm trying to get at. So, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, with all due respect, this bill is garbage. The way it is written, and including that database, I hope that I don't have to. I hope other people will do it. And if they do, if they set up a GoFundMe, a donation service somewhere, I hope that they will sue you. And when I say you, I mean the U.S. government, to get this blocked. Because honestly, it is a violation of our rights. It is a violation of the rights of every American citizen to privacy from each other and the government. And by having the database accessible by the public, and it is collected and held by the government, makes it a Fourth Amendment violation, in my opinion. And I can totally be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. Still doesn't mean that I'm going to, even if I'm 100% wrong, doesn't mean I'm going to change my position per se, that I think it's unconstitutional. But the fact that the government would actually threaten the public with this, yeah, it's just, it's right up there. So if you like this video or you hate it, hit the like or dislike button. Either way, it helps out the channel. If you like what you've seen and you want to, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification to know when I do new live streams, and they'll let you know when I do new videos. And please share this out. I will gladly take criticism, especially from other people that are knowledgeable. But, reading the Constitution, I'm going to stand by my opinion. So, but if you, like me, disagree with this bill, I urge you to get into contact with your representative and your senators. And I'm going to post links to the representation finder on Congress.gov, as well as the House and Senate.gov. All three sites basically link to the same database, obviously, but depending on who you want to contact, it might be quicker to go through the House, it might be quicker to go through the Senate, or it might be quicker to go through the Congress site. So with that, thank you. Have a great weekend. Be sure to support the channel in any way that you can, and peace.